You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
Okay, what do I say that will be acceptable? Because jokes by their nature are about poking fun at something or someone. Then what does one do?
What is the purpose of satire? What is the purpose of a jester? The purpose is when the space is shrinking, you speak louder.
I feel like we don't owe it to anyone to talk about India in a great light or in a bad light. We are just talking about our own experiences.
What can a comedian in India joke about that is acceptable to the audience and the public? The debate on this has been stirred time and again and was sparked once again on 16 November. Stand-up comedian Veer Das has been caught in a storm of applause and criticism on his recent stand-up video recorded at Washington DC's John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, titled quote-unquote, "I Come From Two Indias." In a 6-minute video, Veer Das talks about the duality of India and speaks on topical issues that the country is facing, from the pandemic to the farmers' protest and targeted attacks towards comedians as well. While many on social media have said that India can't take criticism and applauded Das for his candid words, the other side has condemned the comedian for generalizing incidents and projecting a negative image about India abroad. The negative comments and hate speech regarding his monologue reached to such an extent that at least 2 police complaints have been filed against Das for quote-unquote derogatory statements against India. In a clarification, Das on Twitter stated that his intention was to remind people that despite the issues, India is a quote-unquote great country and requested people to not be fooled by edited snippets. But the bigger question here is Das entirely wrong in saying what he did about India? If he is, do comedians need to start self-censoring themselves before they bring their material forward? What do comedians feel about this? We took these questions to stand-up comedians Niti Palta, Sanjay Rajora and Agrima Joshua. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you, and I'm your host, Himmat. The debate on social media has now come down to whether Das insulted India or highlighted its truths. We took this question to Niti Palta, who has been in the industry for close to a decade, and said that it was a very powerful performance and extremely hard-hitting.
It got forwarded to me by a lot of people. And I have to put it on record that my mother did not like it at all.
Mm-hmm.
However, I thought it was very powerful. And he did address the thought in my head where he said, "It's not funny, I know, but this itself is the joke."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was, as a writer, I thought it was damn well scripted. And if the debate comes down to insulting India, I would say he had pros and cons both. It depends on, what you give more importance to. But it was, to me, extremely hard-hitting.
We also took this question to Sanjay Rajora, who is a part of the comedy trio Aisi Tesi Democracy, who felt that though the comments Das made are valid, but adds that when you're talking about multiple Indias, the most important thing which needs to be spoken about is caste, which Das missed.
I personally think that, what the comment he's making is valid, but definitely has not covered the entire thing. Because it is not just about 2 Indias, there are many Indias here. And first and foremost, and this has been highlighted in the, this recently concluded ICC T20 World Cup, when people were taking knees, right? Indian team also took a knee for Black Lives Matter. So I personally think that when you talk about multiple Indias, the most important thing that you talk about is caste, right? And so he did not talk about that, but irrespective of that, whatever he talked about is still relevant. It doesn't mean that we ignore what are we doing to our women, what are we doing to our minorities, what are we doing to the way we are treating science and everything. But I personally feel that if you want to talk about 2 Indias, you have to talk about caste also.
Now, there has also been a lot of uproar on Veer Das's performance, spreading a negative image and perpetuating stereotypes about India through his video. Many attacked Das for generalizing issues in India, and some even labelled him as a terrorist. According to comedian Agrima Joshua, the responsibility for spreading a good or bad image regarding India does not rest with comedians.
The thing is कि आप लोग ये समझ नहीं पा रहे कि comedians are not in any way activists or spokespeople for the country. For that, we have a lot of politicians and a lot of people in high places who are doing a great job of representing the country, painting a good picture of the country. And it's not our job to paint a bad picture. It's not our job to paint a good picture. We talk about our own experiences. और जो मेरा experience है मैं उसी के बारे में बात करूंगी ना. Veerdas will talk about being an Indian. He will not talk about being a Texan. Aditi Mittal, and you're talking about diaspora. A few years ago, Aditi Mittal, to a British audience in front of British people, sat and talked about how her ability to speak so fluently in English is a result of so many hundreds of years of oppression and colonization. She said it in front of British people in their own country. It was because it is her experience. It is, you carry your experience with you everywhere, so you talk about it. Nobody is trying to be an activist or a spokesperson for India. I think they are doing a great job. I think, the people who travel everywhere and hug politicians with or without masks, whatever, I think they're doing a great job of representing India. I feel like we don't owe it to anyone to talk about India in a great light or in a bad light. We are just talking about our own experiences. And I'm sorry, one line I remember that really hit home was, we are a country where there was some contrast that he was trying to draw, and he pointed that we also break down comedy venues if we are upset at a joke. And I'm like, आपने prove कर दिया ना इनका point. How did you come out and say that this is not who we are, when you're proving exactly the truth? So this narrative outside, see, the diaspora, I understand, the NRIs, from what I understand, a little of them, my cousins and all, there is a great need to consistently be proud of your culture, and because there's an identity issue. But being proud of your culture does not mean you have to ignore what's going on. And since when did it become patriotic to support your government and not your people? You don't love 90% of the people in the country, and then you say that I love my country and I don't like these 90% who I consider to be anti-nationals. Then I'm sorry, then loving the government is not, we are not supposed to be servants of the government. The government is supposed to be listening to us. And when we talk about problem that the government must fix, they should be out there trying to fix the problem, not saying "Kyun bola aapne ye?"
Nitipalta adds that it does not matter anymore that if comments are made outside India or inside, given that India is a country that is discussed worldwide and the news does not stop at its borders.
इंडिया के अंदर भी अलाउड नहीं है ना आजकल. So and honestly, look, I have a lot of national pride. I literally bleed Tiranga. I am a Fauji brat myself. So now the thing is, it's an international world now. You can't say that you think news of India is limited to India's borders. And it's a ridiculous statement to even make कि वहां जाके क्यों बोला. The fact is उसने अच्छा भी तो बोला, वो क्यों नहीं देख रहे हो? It's and India is a country that people know about, talk about, and know things about. They're tuned into India. That in itself is a huge thing. And I really don't get this. ये क्यों किया, वो क्यों किया. I don't know, man.
But do the growing attacks and criticism, which have also extended to death threats now, signal that comedians in India now need to self-censor themselves? Speaking about negative feedback in general, Nitipalta said that it's not a bad idea to self-censor yourself, given that everyone nowadays has an opinion on everything.
Well, actually, because I am mentioning pros and cons, the pro is that, yes, we are all self-censoring a little, which I think is not such a bad idea considering everyone and their auntie is calling themselves a comedian. But, and also, unfortunately, irresponsible statements uttered by them kind of rain down on us. The whole industry suffers because of people like that. However, yes, the mood is also like, okay, what do I say that will be acceptable? Because jokes by their nature are about poking fun at something or someone. Then what does one do? Because even the cheaty hati jokes, if an ant could talk, it can file for defamation. I don't know, it's getting out of hand. Again, what I also want to say is that recently I aired my views. Like, you have to crack a joke. If you're a comedian, you crack a joke about what you feel or what you're going through or what you experience. What else do you draw on in your comedy material, right? So I remember making some silly joke about, how I went to a party recently and I met a whole bunch of artists and journalists and and then I was like, for a second, I thought I was in jail. Now, so I actually got a response on a very supportive platform like Twitter, which basically, but again, my point is be offended by the truth in the joke rather than the joke itself, and do something about the truth in the joke rather than the joke itself. And the response I got was, the fact that you get to make this joke in itself tells you that you have more freedom than you thought. And I was like, well, that should be the norm rather than the exception.
Yes.
Why is it a huge favor that you're letting me talk? I mean, we won our independence in 1947, not 2014, as opinions differ. So I found that ridiculous that I should have to, be grateful to be allowed to talk.
Narrating her experience as a stand-up comedian in India, Agrima Joshua says that she has switched to becoming a live comic since there is kind of an agreement between the audience and the comic regarding the nature of the material.
Putting your material online is a very dangerous thing. We are living in a post-truth world where they can take clips of your video, edit it in such a way to make it look like you said something far more outrageous and more insulting than what it actually was. People don't know us. First of all, we have to understand people don't know who we are. There is no context on our lives. To an average person in India, this person speaking in English to an urban audience is clearly mocking the sentiment of this country. The understanding of this culture is very poor amongst these people. For them, they think we don't understand the culture of this country. We are just city people sitting around, which is probably the truth. And at the same time, it's a mix of truth and a false narrative that's allowed. So what I read Veer Das's statement, and he said that please don't fall for little snippets and footage that's taken out of context and put. And yeah, that is very true. So I feel like I have decided that I will never put up videos online. I want to be a live comic. And the people who want to watch me perform, I want them to consensually come in and watch me perform. The people amongst the comedy, people think the mood is more about what we should be careful about saying on video when we are recording. And because I've rarely ever seen a live comedy show going badly, because the audience that comes to watch you, no matter where you are, whether it's Indore, whether it's Mumbai, whether it's Srinagar, they all came to watch you. They'll find you funny, they'll find you unfunny, depends. But they are not going to, they know what they have signed up for. They know what they're going to come and watch. Putting things online is always a risk because you don't know what kind of people you're exposing yourself to. It's understood. It's very much in character for me to come out and say that I believe in freedom of speech. But for some artists, I can understand what are the repercussions. Now, one tweet may not cost me anything. One message or one phone call and one very public video will not cost me anything. But there are some people for whom many things are on the line.
But the larger question which hovers above the criticism is whether the space of political comedy has shrunk in India. Sanjay Rajora believes that the space for satire and political comedy can never shrink, and the people who try to suppress this kind of comedy are not brave.
No, I don't think so. First of all, I personally think what Veer Das said at Kennedy Center was very personal. I mean, he has a right to say that, and he comes from, he comes from a genuine space where he's missing the lost India, right? And तो जो उसने बोला वो बिल्कुल कोई गलत नहीं बोला है. हालांकि मतलब जैसे कि मैंने पहले बोला कि उसने कास्ट को कवर नहीं किया, बट हम किसी को ये फोर्स तो कर नहीं सकते हैं कि आपने ये भी बोलना है, ये भी बोलना है, बोलना है. और जो स्पेस आप बोल रहे हो ना कि it is shrinking or something is happening, what is the purpose of satire? What is the purpose of a jester? The purpose is when the space is shrinking, you speak louder. You refine your language so much that the king in the court says that usko bol do कि the emperor is naked. So the space for satire and comedy can never shrink. The more oppressive the regime is, द मोर टैलेंटेड एंड मोर फनी जो जस्टर्स हों। और अगर कोई ये बोल रहा है कि भाई हमारी स्पेस श्रिंक होगी, तो आप क्या चाहते हो? यू वांट अ यूटोपिया, यू वांट एन यूटोपिया जहां पे आप आपको कोई परसिक्यूट नहीं करेगा, आपको कुछ बोलेगा नहीं, और फिर आप जोक सुनाओगे, देन इट इज द सेम थिंग ना। मतलब कि एक बोल, देन उसमें क्या जोक्स होते हैं? अगर आप देखिए सेफ जोक्स क्या होते हैं? सेफ जोक्स होते हैं अमीर गरीब, लोअर कास्ट अपर कास्ट, रिलीजियस स्टीरियोटाइप्स। तो आप ये करोगे? उसके लिए तो हमारे यहाँ फिल्में और सीरियल्स बन चुके हैं। एकता कपूर ने कर दिया, करण जौहर ने बना, आदित्य चोपड़ा ने बना दिए, वो तो हो चुका है। ये जो लोग है ना हिम्मत भाई, मैं आपको बताऊं, ये जो लोग जो अब ये बकवास करते हैं कि कॉमिक्स को ऐसे सप्रेस करा जा रहा है ना, एक्चुअली ये ब्रेव ही नहीं है। इनमें इनमें हिम्मत नहीं है, ये बहादुर नहीं है, इनको डर लगता है। ये चाहते हैं कि ये चाहते हैं कि ऐसा माहौल हो जहां पे हमें कोई परसिक्यूट ना करे। तो भाई अगर ऐसा होगा तो आपकी जरूरत ही नहीं है हमको फिर यार। तो ये जो भी, हाँ, जो भी ये बोल रहा है, जो भी ये बोल रहा है कि कॉमिक्स को स्टाइफल करें, तुम करियर हो क्या? कॉमिक कोई करियर नहीं है। अगर आपको करियर चाहिए तो एमबीए कर लो। ये हिंदुस्तान के अंदर ये बदकिस्मती इस मुल्क की ये है सर, कि यहाँ पे एवरीथिंग जो है ना पोस्ट लिबरलाइजेशन इट हैज बिकम अ करियर। लोगों को लगता है कि हम कॉमेडी करेंगे, इससे पैसे कमाएंगे, हम वो करेंगे। नहीं नहीं, कॉमेडी इज नॉट दैट, satire is not that. One has to tell the emperor that the emperor is naked. If you can't do that, then I'm sorry, I'm not interested in what you're saying. I will not come and watch what you're saying. And then you can't complain कि यार मेरे को stifle करा जा रहा है. I'm sorry.
While a section of social media has described Veer Das's performance as venomous and inflammatory, and the other side has applauded him for his bravery, whether he was wrong to say what he did is still up for debate. If you liked listening to this episode, please subscribe to The Big Story for episodic updates. We're available on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website, and for any feedback, please shoot an email to podcast@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.